Wouldn't it be great to know how property markets are going to perform this year? However, my many years as a property investor have taught me not to try too hard to predict our markets year by year, but instead take a long-term view, then allow for the cycles around this long-term trend, and then be prepared for uncertainty, surprises, and the unexpected. It's important to understand that cycles are a continuing feature in our economy and our investment markets, and anyone who ignores these cycles does so at their own peril. Yet investors have a tendency to perceive the risks as being at their lowest during booms, and that's the time when property cycles are close to peaking. But it's because the media is full of exciting news, TV shows abound, everybody's abuzz with the tales of many gains to be made in property. Of course, when property prices are breaking new highs, there's a good chance that sooner or later they're going to slow down or turn in the other direction. Similarly, many investors believe the risks are the highest when there's all the bad news in the media and prices are down or the market's stalled a bit. And these are, of course, times when the media reports all the doom and gloom stories and people losing money, and that saps investors' confidence. Of course, the reality is that property slumps are often the best time to snap up bargains while prices are cheaper. Also, it's more likely that prices are going to start rebounding from these now lower points, giving you more room for growth. So why do cycles keep recurring rather than finding a nice equilibrium? Economic cycles exist because we're human and affected by optimism or pessimism, our own and that of others. The world's in a big economy of lots of nations, each at their own individual points in their own economic clock. And every nation is made up of millions of people like you and me, each making our own financial decisions in reaction to or an expectation of what other people are going to do. The sheer momentum of all these economies means that there's always going to be overswings and corrections, resulting in cyclical economic movements. Now, in case you're wondering, economic cycles are well understood and the benefit of counter-cyclical investing is well understood. So you're probably wondering, well, why doesn't everyone make a killing? And the answer is simple: human nature. Waves of optimism and pessimism sweep the community, driving investment cycles and the property cycle. Investment markets, being forward-looking, are driven by expectations and sentiment, as well as fear and greed, and that's why cycles are always going to be with us. And the pendulum swings too far. Interestingly, investor sentiment and therefore investment markets just tend to overshoot the fundamental influences in both directions. During booms, property markets get ahead of themselves, grow a bit fast. During slumps, they tend to remain flat longer than they should be. And in today's connected world, with the continual conveyor belt of messages coming out, cycles seem to have shortened. Some of us have learned lessons from the past. I've often said you actually have to invest through one or two complete property cycles to become a sophisticated property investor. However, some people just don't learn from their mistakes. They keep getting carried away and keep allowing fears and emotions to drive their investment decisions. Then, of course, every 7 to 10 years, a whole new generation of investors has grown up and entered the market. And these beginning investors haven't had the opportunity of learning the lessons from past cycles, and they tend to ensure that the next property boom occurs and the cycle continues on. But there's more to it than that. You've also got to watch out for the unexpected. In the early 1980s, long before there was a TV show of the same name, economist Don Stammer taught me to watch out for the X factor. He said we need to allow for uncertainty and surprises. These X factors are powerful influences on the economy and investment markets that hadn't generally been expected, which for a time have a marked effect on them. They can be from an international source, such as falling oil prices or commodity prices, or a domestic one like the uncertainty currently about the government fiddling with GST or negative gearing. X factors can be negative, such as the world shock after the global financial system melted down in 2008, for reasons that happen way over the other side of the world. At other times they can have a positive effect on our economy, such as Australia's resilience, I should say, to the global financial crisis because of the demand for our resources from China, or the drop in interest rates over the last year when many expected them to rise. These X factors affect the economy at large, which of course affects our property markets. But our markets also have their own specific X factors, unforeseen events that affect the best laid plans and predictions. The lesson is, while it's important to take a long-term view of the economy, you also need to allow for uncertainties and surprises by only holding first-class assets diversified over a number of property markets and having patience. Understanding the cyclical nature of our property markets, the fact that they overshoot and that an X factor can come out of the blue to thwart my best plans has made me a much more cautious investor. Therefore, I protect my assets by owning the right properties, ones that will be in continuous strong demand by a wide demographic of owner-occupiers and tenants, by owning them in tax-effective structures, and by having financial cash flow buffers for a rainy day. Those things that come out of the blue. Examples of X factors over the last little while. Last year, APRA suddenly changed the lending criteria, which made a lot of investors have to review their capacity to borrow. They hadn't foreseen that. And further X factors last year were 2 interest rate drops in the first half of the year when 12 months earlier economists were predicting rates to rise. Then we had the surprise of 2 rate hikes for investors despite the RBA cash rates remaining the same. Predicting the X factor is futile. If it's predicted, it's not an X factor. But what you should be doing is watching out for it and setting yourself up to maximise your profits and minimise your downside. If you're interested in having a good team around you to help you do that, whether you're a beginning investor or an experienced investor, why not have a chat with the team at Metropole? We'll be happy to review your current portfolio or put some plans in place for you to start your investment portfolio so you can take advantage of the market ahead without falling into some of the minefields that may be ahead for some property investors.